you for being here tonight. A lot of people have a tendency to think of car accidents when they're at a high speed as dangerous and when they're at a low speed as maybe not so dangerous. And so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. Basically, there's only three ways generally your car can get hit. It can get hit from the side, it can get hit from the front, and it can get hit from the back. And from the side is the most catastrophic. So it's the most likely that you're going to have a really massive problem, and it has the highest likelihood of you then not surviving through the accident. From the front is the easiest for your body to manage, and from the back is very challenging also for your body to manage. But in the low speed part of a whiplash, we want to sort of look at the numbers. And the numbers up here that we have, the 30 to 60% is the likelihood that somebody involved in a very low speed collision will be injured. And then the 35 to 50% is the percentage of people who are involved in a low speed collision that'll never recover. That'll never get back to where they were prior to that. It's ridiculous statistics, isn't it? Really scary. And 14% is the percentage of people who will become permanently disabled from a low speed automobile crash. And so part of this, last time we spoke, and we took the summer off, but in June we did a talk on basic injury management. Part of that is that people don't know what to do with basic injury management. We had actually a person, a staff member of ours, who twisted her ankle yesterday, and she was putting ice on it, which was right, but then she was trying to get it moving, which is wrong. Right? So, I mean, even in our own practice, we have people that aren't necessarily making the best decisions for their long-term recovery. So there's certain things that you should do when you get in these types of situations, and I want you guys to be very aware of it so that you can make the right decision right away, okay? 3 million new whiplash injuries a year in the US, and so this is all of our stats actually are sort of more US stats. This is where the information comes from. Most of the information I'm presenting was presented or derived from a research institute in San Diego, a Whiplash Research Institute in San Diego, and they do a lot of really great stuff. But the thing that I really want you guys to come away with is that you don't have to be in a high-speed automobile accident for you to have a challenge. In fact, a crash of 10 miles an hour where you're being hit from behind at 10 miles an hour has been equated to catching a 200-pound bag of cement dropped from a 2-story window. That's what it does to your neck. The G's, a trained pilot will pass out somewhere around 4 to 6 G's, and this very low speed collision often will create G-force in the neck of 10 to 15. Every year, about 0.5 to 1% of people who are involved in low speed collisions also die. So, you know, you'll hear these things about, you know, oh, it's just a little bump. You know, how could this person be hurt? And this is one of the myths that I want everybody to come away from here with, and just understand that when you've been in this, you have to take care of it. If your car isn't damaged, it could even be worse, which I'll explain in a little bit. And so this idea of something needing to look bad, to be bad, right? And so there's this principle called conservation of momentum. And a number of years ago, cars really were fairly indestructible, right? They really could hold up to a good beating. And now, I remember I was in university and somebody hit our Corolla, and, you know, $300 bill for the bumper. And that was something that we didn't really have the money to afford at the time, so we just had scratches on the bumper after that. But it was kind of frustrating, and this was before I was educated in this, because I thought, why is this thing getting damaged so easily? Because it wasn't much of a collision. And then years later, as I was finishing chiropractic college, my wife was hit from behind by a car that the person was having a seizure in. And so he was going full speed, 50 miles an hour, hit her. The rear of the car collapsed. The Corolla became a hatchback, right? And she was a little bruised, but she came out of it, and we knew what to do, and she doesn't really have any adverse effects from it. And that is where I want everybody to be. That was a big collision. The car responded appropriately. It was a complete write-off, but she wasn't, which is the point, right? And so that's really important. And so the concept of conservation of momentum looks like this. If you're in a car and somebody hits that car with a certain amount of force, and that car stays intact, then remember in high school, we all have kind of learned energy isn't created or destroyed, it's only transferred. You might remember that concept. And so as the car gets hit, the energy goes into the car. And if it doesn't collapse under that, it transfers that momentum through it to the occupant, and the occupant then dissipates that energy. Does that make sense? So the less damage to the car, the more damage to the occupant. The more damage to the car, the less damage to the occupant at the exact same speed of collision. Okay, that's conservation of momentum. And if you understand that, then we're really happy. Now we're going to learn a little bit about Whiplash, and I'm just going to take you to YouTube where we're going to play this one, because this is a great example of what happens. And I'll just take you through this. So the side profile, now what happens is the seat goes forward and then the neck straightens out because the head is still, right? So the seat is going forward, the head is still, the neck straightens out, and then the neck goes back as far as the headrest is, and then the neck goes forward. So you see the seat's going forward, neck is straightening out. A lot of damage occurs in that S-curve spot there. Then the head goes back. Why it's so important that you have your headrest of your car adjusted, because that's where the jaw injury happens as well. 50% of people involved in car accidents have TMJ issues as well. And then the head goes forward, and that's where the tears happen in the back of the neck. Okay, so that's the flow of a whiplash injury. I'm just going to play it one more time so we can go through it so you guys can see it. So I really want you to get this. It's a nice short video, but I think it demonstrates this very nicely. Body goes forward, head goes back, head goes forward. So at the front aspect are the discs and muscles on the front side of your neck, and why they are really sore after you have that. So there it is. Everything's straightened out. You're getting your S curve. That's been found to be an extremely damaging position. Head goes back, hits the headrest, hopefully, but not if you're in a 1966 model, right? And then head goes forward. Okay, so this is a demonstration of pretty much just bones, right? And the thing about it, which is interesting, is most of a whiplash injury occurs at a speed that is faster than the body's ability to reflexively adapt to it. So a muscle has a reflex, right? And so if you tap your knee, your leg kicks. That's a reflex. And so in your neck, a similar thing is trying to happen. The muscles are really not involved in it at all. And so then you have a high likelihood of ligamentous injury. Secondarily, in the neck, the ligaments are really what stabilize the neck. The muscles really aren't great stabilizers of the neck. They help it move and give a lot of information to your brain about position, but the accident often beats the ability of the muscles to contract, and they just are torn, if that makes sense to you. So as we look at this diagram, on the left you have a neck, on the right you have sort of the rest of the upper back and the top of the lower back. And in between the bones at the front are discs, and those are kind of like shock absorbers. And then you see these yellow things coming out behind the discs, and those are nerves. And then behind there are two joints on the back. Each joint from the second bone in your neck down is kind of like a tripod that sits in there. At the front, one joint, and at the back, two joints. And in between there sits the spinal cord, and then the nerves come out. So the spine protects us. It allows muscles to connect to it. It protects our central nervous system. And so when you look at the video that we saw, and then you look at the neck, you can kind of start to understand as things go backwards, how they start to tear at the front aspect, and then when they go forward, how they start to tear at the back aspect. A lot of the time, people will come into me and say, I saw it coming. You know, I was looking in my rearview mirror, and I saw them. There was no way they were going to stop. It happens all the time, especially in our city on icy surfaces in the winter. We know we had trouble stopping, and we look in our rearview mirror. So this is the #1 takeaway, because avoidance is the best, right? So what do? Do you hold on to the steering wheel tight? If you do, you're going to injure your shoulders, potentially break your wrists, right? So if you see it coming, you get your hands off your steering wheel. Okay, if you cross them over your chest, that's great, but just get them off the steering wheel. Don't try to brace yourself with your hands, okay? You'll avoid shoulder injuries. The second thing you want to do is you want to be planting your feet. You know, having your foot on the brake is a reasonably good idea. I mean, I guess it's a better idea to let your car go forward, but you don't want to hit the car in front of you. So it really depends on your circumstance. You don't want to get pushed into an intersection. So plant your feet on the brake if you're in heavy traffic. If you're just by yourself and there's nobody around, you can take your foot off the brake. But you really want your feet planted. That's a good idea for you. And then you want to push your head back against your headrest, okay? And that's a really important thing. And that's one of the things we're going to give to you guys today is, if you don't mind, just could you hand that one of those out for everybody? I'll just keep going. So what we have is just how to set up your headrest, okay? This is something that not a lot of people know or do. It's often not, you get a new car and you might not even set that up for yourself. And so I want everybody to have that so that they can set up their headrest properly so it's ready to support them as well as possible. So go and pre-adjust that headrest in your car and make sure that it fits properly. The other thing that you want to do is you want to kind of follow the 72-hour rule. Now, if you're in the basic injury management class last time, one of the things that you'll know out of that is that when you have an injury, inflammation comes in to try to stabilize something. It's trying to stabilize it so that it can heal properly. And so that's what's going to happen in your neck too. You're going to have some inflammation come in. It's going to feel very stiff and sore, and so it's going to come into your neck. Everybody who's had a whiplash knows that that's what's happening, but it's not usually the first day. Like the first day, you don't really know. You kind of hurt yourself. You think it's bad, but it's the next day when you wake up usually that you really know. Does that fit for everybody who's had this kind of a thing? And so we have a 72-hour rule, and really, if you can get in that same day, let's say you had an injury in your head and neck, and it malpositioned some of the bones in your neck, and we can reposition them immediately so that it can heal in the right position. That would be the best scenario. It's not going to make it perfect. You're still going to have to heal because you are injured, but it's going to make it so that it heals more sustainably and less likely to have a chronic issue with it, right? So you come in right away. Don't wait, okay? If you've been hit, something's been damaged, come on in. If you're not misaligned, that's fantastic. We'll just leave it alone and give you some advice, and we'll move from there. But and I have seen that a number of times. People will come in right away and they're balanced, and that's fantastic. So we just confirm that, and then we just need to manage then the injury itself. So at 72 hours, that's kind of when maximum inflammation happens. That's the acute phase of the injury. And so that maximum inflammation creates a lot of stiffness and tenderness. And so then as we're getting in there and treating, it's more uncomfortable for people, right? And so you're more likely to have a bigger reaction. And so you want to sort of, if you can get in earlier than that, it's a lot easier for us and a lot nicer for people being treated. And in the 72 hours, use ice. Okay, use ice. If it creates pain in you, nothing that creates pain in you is good. So don't do that if it hurts. But typically it doesn't. Typically it numbs the pain a little bit, but it also reduces the oxygen needs of the cells, and the swelling prevents oxygen from getting to the cells. So if you reduce the oxygen need, less cells die and you have less to repair. Okay, if you put heat on it, it feels really good for about an hour, and then about 3 hours later it feels terrible, and you put more heat on it. But what you're doing is you're causing cells to die because they're needing extra oxygen, but they can't get it because you've increased the metabolic needs with the heat. So don't use heat on an acute injury, okay? The other thing that you want to do, one of the things that has been great and fairly life-saving in terms of collisions is seat belts. Right? So you wear a lap belt and you wear a shoulder harness, and that's a really good thing. But one of the things that it does is it also then has a potential to create its own set of injuries. And so if you've been in a car accident, make sure or somebody you love's been in a car accident, make sure you inspect their abdomen. Is there bruising? right? People have burst appendix from these and they don't even know. So make sure that you're looking, and if there's bruising, then act accordingly in the shoulders also. And then take pictures, because a lot of the times you'll have bruises and then you'll have evidence of an injury, but guess what? A couple weeks later it heals. And if you have a long-term injury and somebody's disputing the fact that you were in fact injured, pictures go a long way to show them what you were actually going through. A lot of the time, the independent medical examiners will be examining somebody a year later, and they'll say, no, this seems like nothing happened here, right? So be aware. It's a soft tissue injury, but it can be very serious. Any questions about anything so far?